Hi, I'm Stephen Greenhut, Director of the Pacific Research Institute's Free Cities Center. We're a website, and we produce books and videos and podcasts that try to promote better urban life through markets and good government. And here we are at the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and I'm with Melissa Caen, who's an attorney, political analyst, TV commentator, and she's San Franciscan, and she knows this city, and we're here to talk to her, see what's really going on, and not always sure what to believe by some of the helicopter reports of the city. And as San Francisco goes, so do a lot of urban areas. I mean, this is a preeminent West Coast city, so let's see what's going on here. Melissa, you want to talk about your background a little bit?
Well, I was born and raised in a small suburb of Atlanta, and it's been interesting watching what their perceptions are of San Francisco. I moved out here in 2004, started writing about politics in 2006, and have sort of been here and doing that through various mediums ever since. My husband, Christopher Caen, of course, is born and raised in the city as well. Dad was Herb Caen, and we're near the road named after him. So he's informed me about a lot of San Francisco history as well. So my relatives, it's interesting. My brother, who lives in Alabama, tried to call me a few weeks ago, and I was busy and I couldn't return his call, and he started sort of frantically calling him. And finally, I called him back and said, "What? We're grown people. What is going on?" And he just said he got really nervous when he didn't hear back from me, because all he hears about the city, it's as if I was in the green zone in Iraq or some sort of war-torn place. He was that concerned, sitting at home in Alabama, seeing what kind of coverage there has been about the city. So reputation has definitely taken a hit here recently.
So you had mentioned your husband, and Herb Caen was Mr. San Francisco, fabulous columnist. Do you have any sense, or does he have any sense what Herb would say about where the city's at now? Is this just more of the same old San Francisco, or is it facing unique problems with you?
Well, he often says, "I wonder what my dad would say about this," but he does think that his dad would be pretty surprised if he were to sort of suddenly find himself in today's San Francisco. He'd be pretty shocked. The San Francisco that my husband grew up with and that Herb Caen wrote in was fundamentally a more accepting city, but also a more fiscally conservative city. Always sort of the San Francisco Democrat is the way he talked about it, very tolerant, but also sort of minding the numbers, minding the taxes, and ultimately very pro-business and pro-military. I mean, this is a military town. I mean, this is World War II, and the buildup of munitions is really a big part of what drove the centers of excellence like Silicon Valley, and the reason why we have so much technology infrastructure now. And there was a big recognition of that, which I think a lot of people today in San Francisco wouldn't really recognize.
Well, and that's a good intro into maybe providing some background on the city. I know a lot of my more conservative friends, they just think, oh, the whole thing's a nut house, and when in reality there are factions. And currently Mayor London Breed, who's up for re-election, she's facing some other moderate opponents, and also a progressive, Aaron Peskin, the president of the Board of Supervisors. So there really are, maybe you can talk about the main factions and whether maybe the more moderate faction has been resurgent in the face of some of San Francisco's public order problems.
We don't really have a two-party system here. We sort of have more of two parts of the Democratic Party. One is what we would call the progressives, and that's sort of left of left. That's sort of your Bernie Sanders left. People who are fans of the Squad recognize some of their policies. And then we have what we call more moderates, or sort of more middle of the road. A lot of the tech influence and a lot of the tech employees are sort of live in that space as well. And what you see in this mayor's election coming up. So Mayor London Breed, our current mayor, is generally thought of as a moderate, although she has embraced certain progressive policies and have tried them out. We're a city that tries things out. And there is at least one candidate, Mark Farrell, who is a former member of the board, who is running to her right. Essentially, it is sort of more pro-law and order. But even he would be, sort of cast aside as a crazy liberal anywhere else. But here he's the conservative. Okay, so we've got London Breed, we've got Mark Farrell sort of running to her right. On her left, slightly to her left, we have Aaron Peskin, who's a longtime member of the Board of Supervisors. And even he is not, people call him a progressive, and it's okay to say that because he is a bit to the left of the mayor. But the truth is, even he's not as progressive as some other factions in the city. The truth is, we don't have a sort of more pure, traditional kind of defund the police type in the race at this point, and that should tell you something, that the most progressive candidate is someone who's only progressive sometimes and sometimes not, and so the traditional group of people who run as progressives aren't even running this time, and that tells you that there is more of a move to the what we call the right, insofar as we don't even have a sort of traditional progressive.
But what you brought up about San Francisco's political world, I remember when I first came up from Orange County, where I was a writer for the Orange County Register, still write for them. I came up and I was going to hear from their conservative Board of Supervisor candidate, and it was Scott Wiener, and then I'm like, and this was at like a Chamber of Commerce event, and I'm like, well, Scott's done some really good things and some things I really oppose, but the point is he was the conservative, and I'm like, wow, this is not Orange County anymore. So it definitely was a little bit of a shock when I was hearing that. So what do you think? When you were talking with Tim and Ro at PRI on their podcast in November, you were saying that Breed's probably a shoo-in. Do you still think that's the case, even with Peskin in the race?
Well, we've got ranked choice voting,
right,
and so that always makes things a little odd. And recent polls have shown that she is the non-candidate for a lot of people. So when you're polling for ranked choice, what you're trying to figure out is who you definitely not going to vote for, like who's sort of your bottom anybody but candidate, and because that's how you sort of can back into the way that the calculations work. And she has a fairly large percentage of anybody but Breed, and that's potentially going to hurt her. Having said that, she does have all of the connections. She's got a lot of the fundraising. She's been able to do what all politicians do while they're in office, which is to shore up support among constituencies by using the power of the office to get their support. She just had her kickoff. It was huge, very well attended, and so I think she is still the front runner. You've also got Mark Farrell, who I mentioned earlier, is running a little to her right. Those two seem to be the two front runners, but when you have ranked choice voting, it's always hard.
In San Francisco, the mayor can put ballot measures on the ballot, and she did that in March with a handful of measures that the voters supported. I wonder if you could go over one was for welfare, drug testing for welfare recipients. One was algebra in 8th grade. One was allowing police more surveillance powers, and there was something else. But the voters took the more conservative course, and maybe if you could opine on whether that's helped Breed.
So Gavin Newsom, before he ran for mayor, he campaigned, when he was just on the Board of Supervisors, he campaigned on this thing called Care Not Cash, which sounds a lot like what we're doing now with drug testing for welfare benefits. So this is the thing that happens while he's on the board. It gets passed, and then he runs for mayor successfully. So this, I'm going to put a thing on the ballot, and then I'm going to run for mayor right afterwards, after I've gotten my name out there, is this sort of playbook. And I think she understood that that voters were upset at the way things were going and wanted her to at least show that she cares and that she's trying to do some things to help the situation. I think that was an important thing for her to show, and whether or not it was enough or was too late is we will see.
But my sense on the initiatives were the specifics of them weren't as significant as the fact that it showed San Franciscans are pushing back maybe in a less progressive direction. Is that a fair conclusion, or?
Well, it's hard. Citywide, we are not, again, we go back to what passes for our political party. Citywide, we are not progressive. Citywide, we almost uniformly vote moderate.
Yeah.
With the exception of Chesa Boudin, which we can talk about.
I want to get to that.
But it's only when you look into district elections that we end up electing certain progressives that go to the Board of Supervisors and push certain agendas.
Now, the recall of Chesa Boudin, that was significant. I mean, he was very far to the left. I mean, as there are different progressive prosecutors, and he was to the left of most of them, right? And that certainly had to reflect the concern about crime and public disorder, right?
He was elected in an off-cycle election. It was a very low voter turnout for that election, and he won by just a few votes. And so I think once the recall was done in a regular election cycle, and more people were out and more people were voting, and of course we were seeing issues of crime, and the biggest sin he committed was by not even pretending to care. I mean, he would go and have these press conferences and really say kind of overtly, like, I'm concerned about, the abuse that cops are meting out, not, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but and sort of, I'm not as worried about the things that other people are doing. And so he was really obvious about it, didn't even act like he cared about crime happening in the city, and it was sort of happening at the time of lockdowns. And so there were a lot of factors, but he told us who he was. He got elected, and again in this low turnout election, and so the larger turnout election, I think, both reflected that anxiety, but also some of the nuts and bolts of just having elections that are where there's a bigger turnout and people are paying attention.
Well, and the school board recall, that was big news, though, right? Because that there were some of those board members, they seemed pretty crazy to me.
Prior to this election, people could not have named a school board member for
Right.
you, and it's one of these things. Nobody cares until you sort of start doing something very strange, and then people sort of pay attention and go, okay, wait a minute, now we're going to come in and deal with this. And the one thing to get parents really riled and less concerned about being canceled or being unfashionable is messing with their kids.
Yeah.
And so when we had all these lockdowns and test scores are plummeting and they're eliminating advanced algebra from middle schools, which is very helpful for kids who want to go on to AP courses and things like that. And then the school board starts trying to rename schools. It was really
Right, because
it was
John
really
Muir
quite
was
enough.
too much, right? He was too far to the right.
Yeah,
And
Dianne Feinstein,
yeah,
just really
the
amazing.
right winger. What do you think, though, on the street here? Are you seeing? There's certainly concern about about some of these issues, the crime and the homelessness issue. Are you seeing any actual improvement, or is it just some political reaction, or are things getting any better?
When you hear people talk about this, always keep your ear out for the word reported.
Yes.
Yeah. Reported crime is down. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe people don't report all the crime that happens because they're not confident anything is going to result, right? If your car gets broken into and the police refuse to come out, or they don't have the manpower to come out in their defense, are you really going to report it necessarily? Are you going to report and have your insurance go up? Are you going to report a mugging where you're not that hurt? You know what I mean? Like if you know that the person's not going to get prosecuted, so the idea that reported crime is going down is something that people like to talk about. Certainly the mayor likes to talk
Right.
about, but I'm always a little skeptical of that number. So report it. Also, there are just places that we won't go anymore. A lot of people, myself included, just don't go. Is it better? I don't know, because I'm not going in certain places to find out. I have learned where to avoid, and it's sad because it's right in the middle of the city. You just don't go there. And so, I don't know, are there fewer homeless people in the Tenderloin? I couldn't tell you. I absolutely will avoid that area at all costs. And so that's the other issue is the perception that there are fewer victims out there, or people not becoming victims because they don't go downtown anymore.
Yeah, that's good. So, all right, and the sense in the community, though, that these problems are still around, they're still festering. There's no sense that anything's been solved anyway, right?
For the longest time in San Francisco, because real estate was such a great bet, a number of commercial buildings would only give tenants, retail, restaurants and things, short leases, 5 to 10 years, which is different than you might see in other places where they give much longer lease terms. Because at the end of that 5 years, you can renegotiate, and that was always a good thing for the building owner.
Right.
So one thing that San Francisco is suffering from, and I think it is related to this issue, is the fact that as leases are coming up, and they're coming up quicker than they are in other places, again, because they just tend to be shorter, everybody is leaving. And what we don't see are stores coming in.
Yeah.
right? There's always a churn, right? It's fine. You see a store shut down, another one takes its place. But what we're seeing is little by little, every time you go to Union Square, there are more and more and more shuttered stores. Essentially, people's leases are going up and they're just leaving. And we're seeing it now. It's 4 years out. We're seeing it now, just tick, 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 ticking away. And no one is coming into that space. So even if you avoid the bad areas, right? Even if you, do all the things you need to do to stay safe, you can't help but see the absolute devastation of our shopping areas, our restaurant industry here, where every single lease that comes up is just absolutely getting out of town and nothing is going in. So when all of this happens, nobody's catering lunch anymore, right? Nobody's going out for lunch anymore. Nobody's going out for dinner. Nobody's going out for drinks. The hotels that were catering to these folks, the restaurants, the flower shops, all the Starbuckses were all just completely empty. And if you didn't have an otherwise diversified business portfolio, you were basically either going out of business or at least shutting down for a period of time. And so that's why our downtown got really, really killed, because there are maybe one or two places where you can actually live in the financial district.
So we're here in San Francisco today, in City Hall actually. So we want to see what's going on the ground. With us today is Erica Sandberg, an independent journalist, and she knows San Francisco and has written and had a TV show about it for years. My oldest daughter lives here, and she got married on Nob Hill last year. And out-of-town guests, especially from the East Coast, they thought they would be coming to Road Warrior or some sort of dystopia, thanks to a lot of the media, especially conservative media, just focusing on the city's problems, and it has plenty of them. And but I think there's just a mistaken idea of what's wrong, and that's what I'd like to kind of work through. Do you agree that some of this media coverage is overwrought?
Absolutely. I mean, in many ways, it's worse than how it's portrayed, and in many ways, it's a lot better than how it's portrayed. So it depends on where you go, who you talk to, what your personal experiences are, and what you want out of a city. So, there are areas, and you and I were talking earlier, there are areas that are spectacular and have improved. Mm-hmm. Right? There are areas where it's about as bad as you could imagine, if not worse. So it really is a very polarizing situation here.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. I took my family to a park. I forget which neighborhood it was, but it was lots of families.
Oh, yeah.
The restrooms were clean. There were food trucks. It was a Sunday in the park. It was lovely. And then not far from here on Market Street, it is really awful, and it's hard to exaggerate. It's like an open air drug markets and homeless again.
Yeah, I mean, some neighborhoods are perfect and getting better. They're gorgeous, they're safe, they're clean, people are engaged, right? You have that, you absolutely have that. But then you have the opposite, which is they're neglected, they're full of squalor, they're blighted, misery, squalor. It is depressing. It is worse than you could imagine. That's why I always say, don't believe what you read, don't believe what you listen to, what you watch on TV. Go. You've got to go, because if you don't see it with your own eyes, you wouldn't believe it.
The city showed an ability to clean things up, at least temporarily, when we had some foreign leaders come in for a conference. Why can't they do anything permanently about the public disorder problem?
That's such a great question. And you say the word can. Why can't they? They can. I think that's a really important word to focus on. They choose not to. It is an absolute choice, right? So if you could clean it up for APEC, which is what we did, you can continue along that vein. You can, right? It's a choice.
And why are they making the wrong choice?
There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of people who have very strong political ideologies who are really content to have what we have. It's a big industry, this so-called homelessness industry, drug addiction industry. It's here because this is what I always say. There's two choices. It's either the government is inept or this is deliberate.
Or both.
Well, no, or both, but I would say overall it's deliberate.
And I saw in one interview, you don't like to use the term homeless.
Right.
And explain that. I agree with where you're going, but explain that.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been, I think, trained to see what we see on the ground level as a homelessness issue. People here they are, they're in tents or they're in a doorway, and we think, it's homelessness. All we need to do is give them a home, right? And everything will be fine. Well, we found out very quickly during COVID that you do that and everything is not fine. It's worse because most of the people who you see on the street have very serious drug issues.
Right, because the state's approach officially is housing first, which means give everyone a home.
Right, so the city's position would be, oh my goodness, these people they were one paycheck away from living on the streets, and here they are.
Right.
And you're looking around and you think, it defies what I see and what my common sense is telling me, which is, as you can see, somebody who looks close to death, they didn't have a job last month, or the month before, or the month before. That's not what this is about. It is very serious substance use problems mixed with the mental illness that comes along with it, and so that's what you get. You put somebody in a home, it's going to be a disaster. People need medical treatment, psych treatment, and detox.
Plus, the city, when it builds homeless housing, it's $800,000 and more a unit, and there's just not enough money in the world to build enough.
There is not nearly enough money in the world. We will never get there. It's kind of like this dangling carrot, right? That, if only we had more permanent supportive housing, we would be fine. And we kind of keep going in that direction, and the carrot keeps moving. Right? And that is exactly what we see.
Well, and the other issue, and we talked a little bit about this before we went on camera, was bureaucracy. So the city has a lot of bad ideas, but it also has a large bureaucracy that really it's so slow that Senator Wiener, who represents San Francisco, he inserted in Senate Bill 423, which was a housing bill to make it easier to build housing, a specific oversight mechanism to look at the slow process for approvals here in San Francisco. So why is San Francisco so bureaucratic? And talk to me a little bit about the numbers of city employees. Yeah,
we have over 30,000 city employees. We only have 800,000 people who live in San Francisco. That is a huge, huge number, right, of city worker to actual citizen. It's a big, working for the city is lucrative.
Good pensions.
You got your pensions, you got health care, you've got everything. And they're a lot of them are very, very well-paid positions. The Department of Public Health, it is nearing $3 billion annual budget. And I really like to point that out with 8,000 employees. And I love to point that out because you walk through the Tenderloin and South of Market and Mid-Market and the Castro, and I could keep naming neighborhoods, and you say, is this healthy? What in the world is the Department of Public Health doing with all those employees, with all that money, right? Because clearly this is a toxic environment.
Well, with Toiletgate, the question is why is the city so incompetent? The reason it got national news, it was all over the place because it epitomized, it wasn't a one-off, it epitomized how bureaucratic and slow and ridiculous it is, and of course San Francisco with the homeless problem, we do have toilet issues here, right? And the famous poop app that helps you navigate the city without hitting things. So why is it like that? Why can't they fix it?
That's the culture. That is the bureaucratic culture that we have here. That toilet gate thing it epitomized how stupid the officials can get faced.
Yeah. Now I'm reading some of your things and watching some of your interviews. You still maintain an optimistic demeanor towards the city, and you said there's a lot of energy and excitement going on. So how do you square those two things? Okay, so maybe I'm a little bit almost overly optimistic about the city, but it's because I truly love it. And a lot of people truly love the city. That's what you see a lot, which is
I'm a San Franciscan. This is my home. This is my place. And kind of that's how I feel as well. Like, I'm not going to let it die. And there's millions of people who feel the same.
But there is some actual reason for optimism from what I see. I mean, we had some initiatives in March that are, the Washington Post remarked on the conservative tilt of the city on those initiatives. And then there was a recall of a very progressive district attorney.
Tessa Boudin.
Yep, and a recall
Got
of
him
a
out.
kind of loony school board.
Got them
And
out.
Overwhelming, too.
Oh,
so,
yes.
So those are good signs, hopefully, too. So,
It's the march of the moderates.
yeah.
Right?
Okay.
This is not what would be a classic conservative platform. This is actual just common sense.
Right.
It just makes sense. People were furious how deeply bizarre things had become. With the school board wanting to rename 50 schools in San Francisco because of supposed ties to slavery and just ridiculous things.
Yeah, they
that were
want to get
not
rid of
true.
John Muir and,
totally.
and Dianne Feinstein.
Take down every mural, take down every statue. Just insane. Get rid of algebra.
And shutting a magnet school.
Shutting a magnet school, just destroying what we know and love and value. And it did not represent the majority. It didn't then, it doesn't now. It's just, for God's sakes, just give us a government that functions.
Right, clean the streets,
Clean the
have good
streets.
schools.
Let businesses operate.
Now, getting to the business,
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some research about the supposed tax exodus. Yes, it's happening. No, it's not. Businesses are actually leaving. However, there is some resurgence in some areas of the economy. But bottom line, on a street level, some parts of the city, some of the neighborhoods, the businesses are booming.
Yes.
And then in some areas, it's like a ghost town. Like in the financial district, there have been a lot of business losses, some of them tied to crime. So what's your sense on the street of the business community, climate here?
Yeah, certainly in neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are thriving. So you're looking at places like in the Marina, Nob Hill, and just various kind of enclaves of restaurants and small businesses. They're doing pretty well, which is great. Union Square, which had been our crown jewel of retail shopping, the department stores, right? Big, beautiful hotels. It's suffering. Financial district suffering, right? There's a reason for this, right? Crime and squalor and theft has led to an inhospitable atmosphere. That is the truth. That is exactly what is happening. Oh, and of course, taxes. It is very expensive to do business here, right? There's a very simple solution. Make the area nice, let people come in, feel comfortable, feel excited about being here, and make the cost of doing business reasonable.